Hey guys, this is Duke from Gas Mask Bunker, here again with another mask to show off for you guys today. Now, on the whole, the market of Chinese industrial masks is pretty much littered widespread with very bland and quite awful designs, to be frank. But this one is quite interesting. This is a mask which isn't fully finished yet, but what we have here is the TF12D prototype. This mask is ultimately going to be aimed at the civilian industrial market, despite being a clone of a Special Forces mask, because as you can see, it has quite a bit of design influence from the Avon M53. However, the comparison really can only be made in terms of its canister and its general facepiece topography, because the rest of the hardware is quite unique. The lenses are quite similarly patterned to the FMJ08 mask, FMJ09, forgive me, and the front voice emitter assembly can be pretty similarly seen on a lot of other Chinese industrial masks as well. There's a lot of features of this mask that aren't fully polished out, mainly the drinking tube, and this mask is also meant to have an integral voice projection unit, but it is not there. They did not develop it yet. I don't know if this mask is going to be finalized. That's supposedly what's going to happen, but as is the case with a lot of other Chinese industrials, it never seems to be the case at all, really. So what we have here is an unfinished prototype, which may never ever get finished, as far as I'm concerned. But we can always hope and see if it does. But enough rambling, let's get into the kit. So we have a facepiece, we have a canister, we have a side blanking plug removal tool, we have the factory packaging, which we do not need to talk about at all, because it is not very interesting. So let's get into the details of the kit. So the canister, let's get that right off the bat. It's a GPCF50 clone. It is rated A2P3, which the A2 is referring to protection against organic vapors and ammonia and other industrial hazards, while the P3 is a particulate filter. So this is very much similar to your average ABEC filter in terms of protection. However, it is unique in the aspect that it is a conformal canister meant to fit with the conformal low-profile filter ports that the Avon M53 designed, and this mask obviously is influenced from. The side blanking plug tool is pretty non-intuitive in terms of what it does. Very much similar to the tool used on the C50 and FM53, where you have these three pegs and holes that correspond together, and you can use it to unscrew it. And yes, it's proprietary, and it's not as unintuitive as using a sort of, just a hand-turned side blanking plug. But the advantage of this is that you can get it a lot tighter, and there's no real risk of it coming undone if you really crank it down there. But you don't really need to think about that as much, and it's kind of a flawed design if you ask me, but we're not really looking for that type of opinion. So we have a port here, we have a port here. They're both GOST ports, but they can fit some NATO canisters, which I'll try and show off later on in this video. There's not much to say about that, really. The front voice emitter and outlet assembly, and yes, I say voice emitter, this is the one thing that this mask has over the M53 is it has a separate front voice emitter. However, it is not that great of quality, it isn't that clear, so it's negligible whether or not this is an improvement, but nevertheless it has a front voice emitter, and that's all that matters. You can see the drinking tube, which is wrapped around this assembly, is made out of a clear plastic or silicone material, and this is not how this mask is intended to look. They are currently, from what I understand, getting a better drinking tube evaluated for safety standards, and they just slapped this one on there before they put it out on the market, and it's quite questionable as to why they're even putting these prototypes on the market when they're not finished, but I guess they consider them enough of a finished product where they can ignore the safety standards that they don't yet have, and you know what? It makes for a more interesting experience, so that's all welcome to me. The drinking adapter here, which I don't have the canteen for yet. The person who sent this to me is sending a canteen, which I might show off in a future video, is the same adapter used on the FMJ08, the S10 clone. So those are cross-compatible with a standard Chinese Type 12 canteen with that adapter. And this plastic assembly here is what houses obviously the outlet valve and the front voice emitter, and this is what was originally going to house a integral VPU assembly, which is sort of a neat idea. It takes a lot of the bulk out of the mask with having a separately attached VPU, but I can also see it causing problems, as if an electronic component failed, you would need to send the entire mask off to the factory for servicing, rather than just taking the VPU off and putting another on. So a bit unfortunate, but it has its perks to it, I guess. But really the big thing here that I really don't like about this assembly is these screw holes. It makes it look like a toy, and they really should have done something like a snap-on VPU cover, sort of like the C50 or even like a PBF even. So that's one thing I wish they would improve, and you can see they left a lot that is not polished out here, or they had to add that cutout for the drinking system. I understand why they did it that way, but really they could have just, had a hole here and just installed this on or something. Just anything but just cutting a sliver of the plastic out to get this to fit around the drinking tube. That's just ugly, man. Don't do that. Speaking of the drinking tube, this is obviously a drinking lever. This is one of the worst drinking levers that I've ever experienced in my life. You know, I can't shit on this too hard because it's a prototype. It isn't finished yet, but my God, this is just absolutely the worst thing I've ever experienced, because the O-rings or whatever gaskets or seals are keeping this thing airtight are just way too goddamn tight. And the plastic this lever's made out of is extremely flimsy and brittle. If you look closely there, you can sort of see a white diagonal streak in the plastic from where it's been put, where it's had stress put upon it from rotating that lever, because this is very flimsy plastic and it feels like it's going to break at any minute as I'm rotating it. So I tend to rotate it from the tubing, but if I rotate it from the tube, then it just pulls the tubing off. So there's just no winning with this design. I gotta very gently finagle it and rotate it like this. But once you do that, that moves the internal drinking lever into position, which I'll show off in a moment. The lenses, as I mentioned, are similar to the FMJ09 mask in that they are sort of a plastic clamshell lens frame design like the UltraView. Very good lenses. I have nothing to say, I have nothing bad to say about the lenses, and they have a decent field of view. So moving on from that, you can see that it has a hood beard at the bottom of the chin here, similar to the M50 and M53 masks, and it also uses similar buckles to the M50 and C50 masks as well. The head harness is made out of a spacer mesh material with a 6-point elastic strap system, which really nothing bad to say about that. It's a very, very comfortable harness. However, my biggest complaint is the ends of the straps themselves. As you can see, there's no clinch tips or folding and sewing. It's just bare cut elastic. And again, prototype, they probably did it this way to save cost while they're making a concept, but that's just, you don't do that, man. That's not a very good idea. And the elastic is so thick that you really have to be pulling the elastic to its greatest extent before it even, starts to slip through. And even I can't get it to slip through using just, average strength here and just, kind of doing this. It sort of does it, but it's overall a very clumsy system. It's not very fun to use, and it's sort of a set and forget sort of system where you just already have it set to your head size and then stretch it on over. So that's all I have to say about that. So while I have this blanking plug out, I will talk about the filter some more. So again, it's Gauss threaded, unfortunately, so you cannot really put a whole lot of NATO canisters on this. The conformal canister even is a bit tight. As I start to get to the end of its travel, it starts to get very, very tight. I'm not sure if that's due to the gasket or just the poor tolerances of these threads. And obviously you can go on the other side as well. And they've even advertised this mask as being dual port, which looks clumsy as fuck. I don't recommend that. I'm not a fan of dual port masks or running masks dual port. It's just not really conducive to, effective operations. I could see it being useful for like special purpose needs where you're using it for decon or whatever, where you need longer filter life and less breathing resistance. But it makes you look like a goofball when you do that. But actually, before I put the blanking plug on, just give you a look at that very poor mold quality. You can see they really rushed this. Like they pretty much pulled the molds for this plug direct from the CNC machine without even finishing it off or, making it look all pretty. So there's lots of machine marks all over this plug from the mold that they didn't finish yet. But as you can see, you can use this tool to turn the blanking plug tightly against the gasket and keep it sealed. And that's really all there is to say about the mask. So actually, no, there is a pocket on the bottom of the chin here, similar to the C50 and the S10 masks and the FM12 and all that. So kind of interesting to see that. It's kind of tight and it's kind of awkward to undo because there's a lot of suction inside of there. So it can make the drinking adapter kind of awkward to pull out. But nevertheless, it's there. It's kind of cool to see. I always like that sort of design where there's like a drinking pocket molded into the mask. But let me flip around the harness and I'll show off the interior, and then I will compare it to the M53 and give my final thoughts on the matter. So, looking at the interior, I really have nothing bad to say about the interior. It has a very beefy peripheral seal, which I can see providing a comfortable seal to a lot of different facial topographies. It's not as beefy as the PMK, but it's still thick enough compared to average Western designs where it's very much appreciated. The rubber, I haven't mentioned yet, but I have no goddamn clue what rubber this mask is made out of. It could be silicone, it could be high-car, it could be anything. I don't really know. It could be thermoplastic elastomer for all I care. I have no clue what this mask is made out of, and I kind of want to know, but I'll have to look into it further because the manufacturer doesn't even mention it as far as I'm aware. And you can see one of the problems is this inner drinking straw, which as you can see is made out of a semi-transparent silicone, similar to the tubing. But the way it rotates, when you rotate it to the drinking position, it flips up. But when you rotate it down, as you can see, it's supposed to go underneath the chin cup, but it doesn't quite go there due to its length. So that's a bit unfortunate, but you know what? They may fix that. Who knows if they fix it, if they complete this thing. I don't really know. But as you can see throughout the back there's the front voice emitter. It kind of sucks, but it's a welcome thing to see. And then just below that, there is an outlet valve, which you probably cannot see all that well due to the lighting and the drinking tube being in the way, but it's there. And not really much else to see below that. It's just a normal nasal cup, and it has 2 inlet valve discs. Pretty standard stuff. Not really kind of all that modern, considering Avon just cuts a hole in the top here, but it works. Doesn't need to be much more than that. It has some deflectors on the sides to route the incoming air over the lenses. And then below each deflector, there is an inlet valve with a plastic guard to keep the mask from collapsing in on itself. Again, similar to the M53. And that's really all there is to say about it internally, so I will reverse the harness once again, and I will test some canisters with it, and I will compare it to the M53. So I will set this right here. Set this Chinese A2 P3 conformal off to the side. Let's get some canisters. So, right off the bat, let's test it with an Avon conformal. We have here a GPCF50 canister. This one's a pretty standard production one, not anything special. And screwing it on the side. Hopefully that's on camera. Yep. It's a bit tight. It will thread on, but it just feels like it's grinding, and I don't know if it's sealing against the gasket or if it's, you know, grinding against the thread. So I don't really trust that personally, and kind of, you already have your pretty decent warning here. Warning for use on Avon products only. Good to know. It certainly shows with this one. Up next is the famous American C2A1 canister. You know them, you love them. And apparently, they thread on perfectly fine with this mask. You know, one of the hardest to thread on NATO canisters works with a Gauss mask for once. Go figure. Up next, let's take a look at the Canadian C7, which is the canister which is being issued with the C4, obviously. That threads on just as nicely as well. A little bit tight here and there, but it works. So, what more can you ask? Plus, this thing has pretty beefy gaskets on the inside as well, so it may just be sealing against those, and there's a bit of cushioning to it, so it just feels like it's a grind fitting. Up next, we have another industrial canister. We have a Recall SP3 canister, which is just a P3 particulate filter for riot control. That sort of threads in. I'm getting a lot of really harsh grind fits, even more than the conformals, so I would say this one doesn't really fit. And I would bring down my C420 and test a papper hose with it. I've already done that. I don't want to drag it down right now, but I'll just say that it does not, the threads don't even engage. If you want to put a papper on this thing, good luck, because C420 hoses just don't work with these masks. So, with that out of the way, let's bring down the M53 and give it a comparison, shall we? So obviously there's quite a lot different. It has overall the same flavor. It's really spiritually the same mask, but there's a lot that's different. I don't believe that they're going to ever intend to install a VREU or any sort of positive pressure system in these masks. I haven't really seen any Chinese masks that have ever done that personally. Not even SCBA dedicated ones. There may be a few, but there really isn't a lot of Chinese SCBA stuff on the market, which I can imagine we should be pretty thankful for in some cases. But nevertheless, I don't think they're adding a VREU or positive pressure of any sort, as I said before. Drinking tube, overall, same flavor, same arrangement, just a lot that's different and a lot that's lower quality. Really, again, the only thing to compare here is just the general profile of the face piece and how, you know, it has the conformal filter ports and all that. It's just kind of cool to look at the two side by side and see where they got their influence. There's not much else to say about it, really. So I think I'll end the video here. I've shown off basically everything I could possibly think of to show off for you guys. So with that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed. If you have any comments, questions, corrections, or concerns, drop them down in the comments below. I am Duke, and I will see you all later.